back to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us at That Kevin Show, cleverly titled. Joining me is Ashley Hayek. She is the executive director for America First Works. It's part of the larger universe of the America First Policy Institute. Ashley, it's good to see you again.
Thank you for having me, as always.
There's been so much discussion about how the race is changing because Kamala Harris is now the selected nominee. She wasn't voted for. Nobody voted for her yet. She's run twice now for president, and she's not received a single vote. But she has been selected. She will be the front person for this. And you know, because you've been part of my show for a while, that I've talked about women's issues for a long, long time, way out in front of everything else. And I think that Trump and the Republicans as a whole can make a lot of headway with women this cycle, specifically when it comes to the safety of children in their schools, specifically their daughters, specifically keeping boys out of their daughters' locker rooms. But Mayor Pete is out this last week saying that the left isn't anti-family. Ashley, you're a mom. Your reaction?
Yeah, so a couple of things. About 2 years ago, the America First Policy Institute unveiled the America First Women's Agenda. It was based off of Kellyanne Conway's in her book, The Safe Agenda. It's security, affordability, fairness, and education. So using those pillars, let's break down this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, security. And this could also be, financial security. It's, are they protecting, I don't know, say men in a women's bathroom or boys in a girl's bathroom? No. Are you safe in your communities? No. When you have a border crisis, that look at, the 3 women that are highly featured because of the border crisis, Blake and Riley being one of them in Georgia, murdered by illegal aliens. You don't have a safe community for women or children. Is it affordable? Absolutely not. 1 in 3 parents saying that they can't afford school supplies for their kids for going back to school. Inflation out of control, cost of living out of control. Kamala Harris is she was the tie-breaking vote for what I like to call big government socialism bill, the Build Back Better bill that Joe Biden put forth, and that caused rampant inflation. You look at fairness, and again, is it fair for boys to compete against girls? Is it fair for schools to get their funding cut because they refuse to play into the radical left's transgender agenda of, transing your kid behind a parent's back? And then education. And we have seen time and again that conservatives, the America First movement, President Trump has been a champion of school choice. And meanwhile, the left and Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and the rest of them, they all bow down to the national teacher union bosses who wanted to mask our kids, indoctrinate them, and keep them out of school, and forget giving parents the choice on where to send your child to school. And when you look at all of those pieces, is the Democrat Party, is the radical left, is Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and Tim Walz and the rest of them, are they really providing an agenda that is good for women and children? Absolutely not. And
no. Actually, you're misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding. That's the old left. They picked Tim Walz to be the running mate, so they fixed all those problems, right? They balanced out. They got a nice moderate who would, appeal to the center of the country.
Right. Well, and another thing, I think it's so interesting when you have a woman who's chirping on race and gender. It was so interesting. I did this interview last week, and this guy touted off, this administration put 50, Black judges. Why does race matter? And if you care that much, why did she choose an old white guy to be her running mate if she really cares about diversity so much? The hypocrisy from the left is absolutely astounding. And by the way, we need to remind people that Kamala Harris hasn't changed her position at all. She actually hasn't said anything. She hasn't done a press conference. She hasn't rolled out any of her policy plans. That's her staff kind of changing things on her website in the background. She hasn't told us where she stands in the economy or where she stands on national security. Or how about Israel? Oh, that's right. She made sure not to choose a person to be her running mate because he was a Jewish American. So we see her kowtowing to the radical parts, the most radical parts of the Democrat Party in her run for presidency, but also refusing to tell us where she stands because she doesn't want to have to answer to them at the same time.
I want to stay on this topic for a little bit. because the strategy is obvious. And by the way, for those of you confused, I don't actually believe Tim Walz is a moderate. The reason I joked with that with Ashley is because he has actually signed legislation to take your kids away from you if you won't let them cut off their body parts once they've been brainwashed into doing it by their public school teacher. He signed that legislation into law in Minnesota. That's Tim Walz. So yeah, she picked an equally radical counterpart as her running mate. There's no balance to that ticket at all. But Ashley, let me microscope in on this for a second, because the strategy is obvious that they are going to play for the female vote. The single female vote is radically hyper on other things, and I think that Trump has done a very good job of addressing many of the issues that the suburban moms care about. But Kamala's going to bathe in abortion blood. This is what she's going to be, dressed like Braveheart at her convention. She's going to have blood paint on her face, and she's going to come out and she's going to give the war speech that she's going to stop the mean, nasty men from letting you kill your baby. Oh, by the way, in only, the states that actually have those bans, because a lot of the country doesn't. The former president was asked about this over the weekend, and in his 90-minute freeform press gathering that he gave, by the way, answered every question, didn't back down, just stood there and gave answers. But he said that this issue is not as animated this time around. Since the fall of Roe, since Dobbs, Democrats have had some success in places like Iowa and Kansas, doing things on the abortion issue that I think people were surprised by. How important, as a female voter, do you perceive Kamala's emphasis on abortion to be when it comes down to what people are really casting ballots for on November 5th?
The amount of people that are motivated by the extreme policies of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are very, very, very small, because they've gone too far, quite frankly. One of the things that we learned with Governor Tim Walz is that in his state, they allowed abortions after the baby was born, where
beyond
the
pregnancy.
doctors beyond pregnancy, where the doctor was supposed to save that baby that was born alive and didn't, and there were no repercussions for that. That's too far for the American people, no matter how pro-choice or pro-life, that's too far. At the end of the day, right now, people are choosing between heating and eating. People are trying to determine, are they going to be able to take that summer vacation before school starts up again? These are real issues that are affecting everyday Americans. When your communities are unsafe, literally crime is skyrocketing. When you can't afford groceries, when you have fentanyl overdoses, which is the number one killer of youth, that's the conversation is not how late can I have this abortion. The amount of people that is affecting is so incredibly small. And I hand it to the states for leaders like Kim Reynolds and Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott and Governor Kemp, who took it and ran with it and, had a position, and they were the ones who were most successful in their elections in 2022.
We're going to take a quick break. Got to pay some bills. She's Ashley Hayek of America First Works. Kevin McCullough from Times Square. Don't go away.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.